Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the organisers for the opportunity to say a few words about iDAScore. Jaco, I want to disclose that I work for Vitrolife. I'm an embryologist. My background is clinical embryology. So I would like to share my point of view about the system that is now available. So let's start. So I just want to tell you quickly about the use of artificial intelligence in evaluation, and then tell you about the benefits of this iDAScore and how it has been validated. So why do we use AI when we evaluate embryos? And I think it fits very well with the previous, or as a follow-on from the previous speakers' talk about ICSI. One of the things that if ICSI is increasing, it creates a lot more work in the laboratory from the embryologist's point of view. And with all this extra work, all this extra handling of oocytes, we need to find somewhere of alleviating some of the stress and the work, not just on the oocytes, but also on the embryologist. So if the workload increases, you can have an effect on the productivity of your embryologist and the safety of the work that is actually been happening in the IVF laboratory. But we also want to make sure that there's no subjectivity between embryologists when we start selecting embryos and manage our time resources properly. So you may all be familiar with the morning rush hour in the IVF laboratory, where there's so many things happening at the same time, and we want to try and reduce that. We have seen a study like this where embryologists compare selection of the inner cell mass and trophectoderm, and there's not a very high correlation with the way that they select the embryos. So the basics of iDAScore, it stands for Intelligent Data Assessment Score, and basically we take time-lapse sequences of the first 5 days of development of the embryo. It is then analyzed and then predicts from the formation of the blastocyst the possibility of a positive fetal heart. So the artificial intelligence algorithm was created with the use of more than 100,000 embryos, and of those more than 100,000 embryos, more than 14,000 of those we knew that they created a positive fetal heartbeat. What was interesting about this, the development of this data as well, is we wanted to make sure that we have a lot of diversity in the data, so that this type of algorithm can fit in any laboratory in any part of the world. So we included data from 18 different clinics from all over the world, different patient populations, different treatments, IVF, ICSI, so the diversity is really high. And what that practically means is that we wanted to create a system that is at least as good as your best embryologist in order to select the right embryo for transfer. We must look at the entire cohort of embryos that will be included, and there shouldn't be any additional steps of annotating or evaluating embryos in order to select the embryo, and it should be a very fast process, a fast output. So if we look at the efficiency, this was a study by Marcus Messinger that was reported about the time efficiency. Taking into account that you have six embryos per patient, if you do manual annotations, it can take you up to 26 minutes for each patient. And if you use the previous type of artificial intelligence, which was known as the KID-score plus guided annotation, that brings your workload down to 10 minutes per patient. And now with iDAScore, on the same amount of embryos, 6 embryos per patient, you can bring that down to about 1 minute for each patient. So it dramatically reduces the workflow. For instance, in a clinic where you have 6 IVF cycles per day, with 6 embryos each, it'll be 3 hours a day of manual annotation, 1 hour if you use KID-score, but when you use iDAScore, for those clinics, it'll only be as much as 6 minutes in that type of clinic. Another problem we see, or challenge, is the fact that we quite often have patients with large numbers of oversights, and if you have to work through these patients, that will also take a very long time. Allowing then that you can have all your patients, all your oversights in one dish. Using the iDAScore, you can get the priority very, very quickly within about 15 to 30 seconds. And what the iDAScore then does is it will rank your embryos from the highest possible score to the lowest score. It doesn't tell you if it's going to make a pregnancy, it just tells you the highest probability for that specific embryo. And so it's a decision support tool in order to help your embryologist make the selection in a very, very quick and efficient way. A little bit about the validation of iDAScore and how it works. So first of all, from the input side, as I said, we use the time-lapse sequences for the first 5 days of embryo development, and the output then is a positive fetal heart. When we acquired this technology, it was already known as IV from the Virtus Group in Australia. And once we took over the technology, we were able to add a lot more data and increase the data tenfold because of our experience in time-lapse technology. So in terms of external validation, and I'm going to show you now a few studies comparing morphology, euploidy, outcomes like fetal heartbeat, and also live birth and miscarriages. This publication from this year already shows you the different iDAScores. You've got the group of highest iDAScore here on the first graph, and for all the different parameters, positive HCG, clinical pregnancy, ongoing pregnancy, and live birth rate, you can see that the higher iDAScores correspond with the highest outcomes, and then your embryos with the lowest iDAScores with the lowest outcomes. Similarly, if we look at the live birth rate increase over time, you can see it also broken down in patient age groups. And your highest iDAScores are the ones in the bars that you can see in green. So the correlation is really, really efficient there. This one was looking at the miscarriage rate when using and applying iDAScore. And again, when you have the higher iDAScore, you could see that there's a trend towards lower miscarriage rate in these patients. This one was also looking at the percentage of implantation rate, and same trend that we can see for both autologous oocyte as well as for donor oocytes. And this was also just looking at the odds ratio of implantation using the iDAScore. And again, obviously with oocyte donation, you could see a much higher odds ratio. And then last but not least, looking at the genetic side of things and euploidy, very good correlation as well, where the higher iDAScores were seen where you had more euploid embryos, and then lower with single aneuploidies, and with multiple aneuploidies, it was a much lower iDAScore. So the validation is there and showing the correlation between the use of it. So in summary, we wanted to create a decision support tool where you can select your embryos that is consistent and is not subjective. It's something that is completely independent and is based on the sequences of the time-lapse that you've seen over the first 5 days. It's a fully automated system, so as I said, you can press the button and within 1 minute you have the results. And there are many clinics now who solely rely on the iDAScore to select the embryos. It doesn't replace the embryologist, it supports them in selecting these embryos in order to reduce the workflow, which we now see is increasing more and more. So it's a very reliable method, and yes, I thank your time. Thank you.
Thưa quý vị, chúng ta đã trải qua một số báo cáo trong buổi sáng ngày hôm nay, và bây giờ sẽ là thời gian giải lao giữa phiên. Xin được kính mời quý vị, chúng ta sẽ thưởng thức nước lên trà và khu vực đại sảnh. Sau đó khoảng 15 phút đến sau đó quý vị sẽ trở lại hiện trường chính để chúng ta tiếp tục theo dõi các bài báo cáo trong buổi sáng ngày hôm nay. Và cũng xin được kính mời quý vị, chúng ta sẽ quét mã QR code ở cái tờ timeline này để quý vị đăng ký nhận tài liệu cũng như là đăng ký nhận chứng chỉ buổi Và cuối buổi ngày hôm nay lúc quý vị sẽ nhận cái địa chỉ này trước 11 giờ của ngày hôm nay.